Hello, we are
Paul, Leo,
Claudia, and Barbara, an Erasmus student from Poland. Today, we're going to be talking about our restaurant concept called La Nourriture du Futur.
when we developed our restaurant, we first looked at insects and their behavior, especially in terms of eating insects and consuming them as an alternative to common meat sources. We started by building a mealworm farm, actually trying to breed mealworms ourselves. We bought a little box and then we got to a huge amount of mealworms and started experiments and tried to flavor them and tried to eat them, because insects are a very nutritious source of food. If you want to receive 1 kilogram of protein from insects versus 1 kilogram of protein from regular meat, like beef or pork, you will have to spend different amounts of water and food going into these productions. For example, if you take insects, you spend around 1 liter of water and 1.7 kilograms of food on 1 kilogram protein. This is because insects are basically made out of protein. If you compare that to beef, you would have to spend 1,500 liters of water and 20 kilograms of food for the same amount of protein, 1 kilogram. Same goes for the reproduction rate of the animals. While people on Earth getting more and more, the space stays the same. And if we want to still be able to feed this amount of people, we kind of have to get creative in the food production and also in the food consumption. Another factor is the reproduction rate of insects. People get more and more on Earth while the space stays the same. So if we have a fast reproducing animal, that's great for meat production. For example, to get the same amount of protein out of the two different types of animals, you would need 200 insects, which you will get in 6 weeks with the reproduction rate of insects, and 4 cows, which will take 6 years. So you see, there is quite a difference between the two food sources or protein sources in this case. But there's...
Hello, we are
Paul, Leo,
Claudia, and Barbara, an Erasmus student from Poland. Today, we're going to be talking about our restaurant concept called La Nourriture du Futur.
when we developed our restaurant, we first looked at insects and their behavior, especially in terms of eating insects and consuming them as an alternative to common meat sources. We started by building a mealworm farm, actually trying to breed mealworms ourselves. We bought a little box and then we got to a huge amount of mealworms and started experiments and tried to flavor them and tried to eat them, because insects are a very nutritious source of food. If you want to receive 1 kilogram of protein from insects versus 1 kilogram of protein from regular meat, like beef or pork, you will have to spend different amounts of water and food going into these productions. For example, if you take insects, you spend around 1 liter of water and 1.7 kilograms of food on 1 kilogram protein. This is because insects are basically made out of protein. If you compare that to beef, you would have to spend 1,500 liters of water and 20 kilograms of food for the same amount of protein, 1 kilogram. Same goes for the reproduction rate of the animals. While people on Earth getting more and more, the space stays the same. And if we want to still be able to feed this amount of people, we kind of have to get creative in the food production and also in the food consumption. Another factor is the reproduction rate of insects. People get more and more on Earth while the space stays the same. So if we have a fast reproducing animal, that's great for meat production. For example, to get the same amount of protein out of the two different types of animals, you would need 200 insects, which you will get in 6 weeks with the reproduction rate of insects, and 4 cows, which will take 6 years. So you see, there is quite a difference between the two food sources or protein sources in this case. But there's one problem. People hate insects. They are disgusting. They don't like them. This is why we chose to make a restaurant, or more or less eating experience, that will try to overcome the disgust people have amongst insects to make them delicious and edible.
Most people find eating insects rather disgusting, hence why within our restaurant concept we decided that we would like to present insects and make them more appetizing by showing them as delicacies or as some sort of gourmet fancy food that people would be instantly more attracted to. The way that we also did this was by bringing people closer to their food, and what we used in order to do that was a show cooking. In this case, people would be able to see the food production process, or rather the way their own food is prepared. The way that we have designed the overcoming disgust process to occur within our restaurant is with a series of 5 basic steps. The first one, when the dish is first served, the user thinks, oh, wow, this looks amazing, because it's obviously gourmet food and very decorated. However, it instantly goes into the other complete side to the disgust side really, when he or she realizes that there's insects in their food. What next happens is that they feel intrigued because they find it interesting and adventurous to try new dishes with this kind of insect recipes. And then, however, they are once again a little bit unfamiliar with it and they're not quite sure whether they would like to take it or not. However, finally, in the end, it is designed in a way that the user feels curiosity for the plates and decides to try it, hence reaching that point of overcoming disgust.
Now I'll guide you through the menu, and we start off with our amuse-bouche, which is a crispy grasshopper on a leaf. It's called leaf scroll, and we have universal mash in different spices presented on a rice paper, which got into unique shape every time. For the soup, we got pumpkin decoction, which is tube-shaped universal mash within a soup. Our main course is crawling ribbon, which are fettuccine with some fried insects. And now you might need a refreshment. That's why we add grilled insects into our fresh salad. As a dessert, we serve you rapid puff, but I don't want to say too much because we cook it afterwards. At the end of the meal, you get a special surprise, which happened to be sweet amber this week. But enough of the talking, let's cook and follow me to the restaurant. Hello everyone, my name is Par and welcome to the restaurant. Last semester we created 7 dishes and I'm gonna prepare one of them. It's called Rapid Puff and we're using raspberries and our specialties, the mealworms. So, in the freezing area, we're gonna shock freeze them the most harmless way. Let's fire up the heating area. Give it a little spin. Alright. To the butter we add some sugar. We're going for the raspberries. Great, fair enough. I got my mealworms. Add the mealworms. There. Everything in one cube and give it a last mix. Fair enough. Put it into my mold right there, and last but not least, again in the freezing area. Oh, lovely! Turned out really good. I like to decorate my piece, my dish, like that. Bon appetit! And last but not least, again, in the area. Oh, lovely!
Wir haben eine Zuschauerin, Elisabeth. Zumindest eine, die im Zoom-Webinar ist. Vielleicht reden wir direkt mit dem Team.
Gern.
Willkommen, Leo, Claudia und Paul. Könnt ihr uns ein bisschen erzählen, wie ihr da drauf gekommen seid, Insekten uns schmackhaft zu machen? Was war der Hintergrund davon?
Ja, wer mag, soll ich? Kann beginnen. Wir haben das Semester, in dem das Projekt entstanden ist, eben, da ging es um Essen grundsätzlich und unsere Beziehung zum Essen und wie wir mit der Thematik umgehen. Und wir haben halt auch unter anderem am Anfang verschiedene Experimente gemacht in Kleingruppen. Und ich war in dem Team, wo wir quasi experimentiert haben mit Mehlwürmern. Das Experiment an sich war ursprünglich relativ simpel gedacht. Es war einfach quasi eine Mehlwurmfarm mit verschiedenen Stockwerken zu bauen. Das funktioniert dann so, dass man quasi oben eine gewisse Anzahl an Würmern gibt, die dann sich im Käfer entwickeln und die Käfer legen dann dementsprechend wieder Eier und das werden dann wieder Würmer und somit kann man quasi sich seine exponentielle Wurmzucht installieren. Und das, was relativ früh irgendwie mich fasziniert hat, war, Ich sage jetzt ganz bewusst weil das waren ja verschiedene Teams und wir sind danach erst zu einem Team geworden.
Mhm.
Und was mich relativ früh fasziniert hat, ist die Möglichkeit, auf so engem Raum quasi, also da ist mir so klar geworden, dass was hier jetzt entsteht, quasi also diese Würmer kann man füttern mit Kompost, mit Küchenabfällen, was hier quasi aus Müll entsteht, wird wieder zu Essen, und das war irgendwie ein interessanter Gedanke. Und in weiterer Folge haben wir dann eben überlegt, wie man Würmer irgendwie interessanter machen kann oder schmackhaft. Dann haben wir experimentiert, sie aufgrund des Futters anders schmecken zu lassen. Zum Beispiel haben wir ihnen Granatäpfel gefüttert und in der Hoffnung, dass sie dann nach Granatäpfel schmecken. Das hat aber dazu geführt, dass sie überwässert waren und es leider nicht überlebt haben. Aber genau, und dann ist uns aber relativ schnell aufgefallen, das war uns von Beginn an klar, aber es war uns dann sehr evident, dass das ein Riesending ist, dass die Dinge halt irgendwie jeder sehr grausig findet, sowohl vom Sehen als auch von der Gedanken. Und dann gibt es halt, wenn man einfach auf YouTube mal eingibt, diese ganzen Challenges, Eating Worms und Insects. Also es ist ein ziemlich großes Thema, aber auf der anderen Seite ist es eine ziemlich vielversprechende Lösung, wenn es darum geht, Proteine und vor allem Fleischersatz also Fleisch zu supplementieren in irgendeiner Form, weil es einfach, weil ein Insekt einfach vom Protein-Ratio viel effizienter ist als ein Rind oder ein Schwein zum Beispiel. Und deswegen haben wir uns überlegt, ob wir nicht irgendwie ein Konzept entwickeln können, das zumindest die Idee verfolgt oder den Anspruch hat, diesen Ekelgedanken aufzugreifen und irgendwie in was zu verwandeln, wo die Leute sagen, das ist aber spannend, das würde ich jetzt gern doch ausprobieren, oder es ist ja gar nicht so schlimm, oder einfach quasi diesen Prozess, diesen Ekel irgendwie zu realisieren und um ihn dann auch überkommen zu können.
Mhm.
Wenn wir über Essen reden, da ist ja der Geschmack nicht ganz unwesentlich. Wie schmeckt?
Es ist eigentlich sehr gut, wenn ich es auf Englisch erklären könnte. It has a very peculiar taste that once mixed in with specific, for example, spices or different flavors in combination with the food, it actually tastes really good. So it's a really good alternative, really.
We also experienced in your first presentation some of the dishes. I thought the mealworms they don't have a distinctive taste. It's a kind of a mellow taste. It's not a strong taste. The crickets, on the other hand, or the Heuschrecke, was a bit shrimp-like to my recollection, which was surprising and quite good actually.
Ja, und als wir das Testing gemacht haben, haben wir uns einfach mal dazu entschieden, einige Geschmäcker auszuprobieren mit unterschiedlichen Sensory Deprivation, also die wussten auch gar nicht, was sie denn essen. Und da haben auch viele gesagt, eben, dass es so einen nussigen Geschmack hat. Und wir hatten dann auch schnell gemerkt, wir müssen was an der Form ändern, falls es nicht gerade zu diesem knusprigen Snack kommt. Weil ähnlich wie beim Verwursten oder bei anderen Zutaten, wo man nicht genau weiß, was es drin ist es einfach leichter zu konsumieren in einer Form von einem Fleischleibchen oder wie man es auch beim Faschierten kennt halt. Und da wollten wir eine eigene Form dann mit diesem Universal Mesh machen. Das hat ja auch ganz gut geschmeckt.
Eure Testphase war a bit scary for us because we were not so quite sure what you were giving to us.
Ja.
Okay.
Was der Leo am Anfang schon angedeutet hat, dieses Projekt war ja eins von mehreren Projekten, die wir im letzten Wintersemester gemacht haben, wo wir als Klasse für Design Investigations, wie wir uns nennen, unter Anna Jane eben das Thema Essen und Essensproduktion, aber auch Essensvertrieb, also der ganze Komplex der Essensindustrie, Nahrungsmittelindustrie. Und da haben wir, wie wir es jedes Semester tun, einen Experten, Gasttutor eingeladen, eine Tutorin, Christiane Aschauer, eine Biologin, die vor allem in der ersten Hälfte unsere Experimente begleitet hat. Der Leo hat schon von der Wurmfarm gesprochen. Wart ihr in anderen Teams am Anfang? Weil wir haben Fische gezüchtet, wir haben Pflanzen auf verschiedene Weise kultiviert, wir haben Würmer gezüchtet, Pilze.
Aber die Hühner nicht.
Ja, Hühner hatten wir im Hof, da freute sich die ganze Uni. Die waren für die Eier da, nicht fürs Fleisch. Also vielleicht die anderen Teammember können erzählen, was sie für Erfahrungen in dieser hands-on, sich die Hände dreckig machenden Anfangsphase des Semesters erlebt haben.
Yeah, it was actually very interesting because me personally, I was in the chicken team and we were in charge of taking care of the chickens, and we learned a lot about how they work and how they're treated in farms where they're produced in mass rather than in more nutritional and biological places where it's like they live healthier lives in essence. And we learned about the difference of it. We learned a lot about how to take care of them correctly as well, and the challenges that can come in place in these kind of places as well. And this also actually led us to some of the experiments that we did throughout this entire process that we took in the creation of our project. And one of these was actually trying not only insects themselves, because we began with the entire topic of disgust on its own and how we can taste different alternative foods rather than only insects. And one of the things that we came up with was actually animal residues that we come across.
Now you're frozen.
No.
Oh,
Claudia is frozen.
das kann ich gar nicht weiter tun, weil ich nicht im Huhn-Team war.
Yeah, but for instance, with the chicken, I was really amazed how different their characters were. So there were actually real personalities, and it's amazing also how intelligent they were and how they liked to be petted and cuddled, and it was really an amazing experience. I remember it was a bit more than a year ago when we started to write this brief with Anab, and it was really, really amazing that after the semester ended, a month later we went into a lockdown where scarcity was actually a topic. So we could not produce relevant items in the EU, and it was so much closer from one moment to the other.
Yeah, it's also when I thought, like, when the lockdown happened, I was really like, it would be really cool to have some vegetables on the balcony or something. Because normally you're like, no, that's too much work. But then it's really become evident that it's might be a good thing if we could be a bit more self-sustained.
It's also for instance, aquaponics, where you have this circle of plants and fish, and they are giving the nutrients to each other, is also really kind of space saving. So that would be very well suited for an apartment or a little balcony or something like this.
Yeah, definitely.
Wir haben jetzt eine Zuschauerfrage. Und zwar die Elisabeth fragt uns, wo hattet ihr die Insekten her? Kann man die online bestellen?
There's actually a lot of places where you can get insects from, surprisingly. But some of the easiest ones to get were actually from reptile shops, which we then put into a box where we took care of their own food in order to make sure that they were consuming food that was only good for them as it was good for us, because essentially their nutrition becomes our nutrition. Mm-hmm. And so we took care of that before we actually started working with them in terms of the food and preparing them. So, but they're really easy to get. You can get them on the internet, and there's a couple of reptile stores even here in Vienna where they sell them by really cheap and a bunch as well.
I think what you said there is that the food you feed the animals, but also plants that we then eat. So we basically eat what they eat. So the circular thinking and thinking of the entire chain was a big point of this entire semester, to make it very feelable for all of us that all these things they are connected. You can't just look at one element and then solve it all. But of course, with any project, with anything you do, you have to start somewhere. But it's about the awareness of this huge interconnectedness.
And I think what's also important in our department is the doing rather than the reading about. So I think it also feels very different if you actually do it and make food.
Yeah. And you got a closer connection to it.
Yeah.
Sorry,
It's definitely
Claudia?
a very different experience. I was saying that it's definitely a very different experience from reading about what's happening somewhere than from actually realizing what's going on and having some influence over it. And actually, it's a lot more enriching to have your hands-on practical activities rather than just reading about it.
And it's also more fun. Yeah.
Your project, I think also the building of the actual machine was a big part. And I think for some of you are in the first year, I think.
Yep, they are frozen again.
Yeah, I mean, we
no.
We got to know the people down in there, and they were really nice, and we got to know how they are working, and they showed us daily responsibility if you work with metal, but we could look at them by melting it together and worked really well together.
Yeah, just learning overall about how the ways that metal could affect the food that you prepare. So it was very interesting to learn about that.
So make some material choices based on the effect it has on food. You can just cook food in your Obi Baustall. That's not hygienic, and that was also an interesting aspect to think about, to just not buy something, but to have really a talk with the guys and at the metal workshop and see, okay, what makes sense actually to buy. And that's something that was interesting, because it also added this factor of it actually cooks food in a way that it's not just it's a show, but it's not just a show in that.
And actually just the creation of the machine itself, because like Leo said, it is a show in the end, and we had to make sure that the show part was there, that it was relevant to people, because that's one of the main parts that captures people's attention really, and what grabs them into the whole project and allows them to see how, first of all, how glamorous in a way it can be to still consume insects, and how it's still very effective, and it can be even entertaining to a certain extent.
What I liked about your project was these ingredients, because you had a little bit of all of it. There was a lot of research, there was a lot of experimentation, then you had a great deal of building, you had a performative part, you did the videos. So I think you really learned an amazing skills in your first semester, I have to say.
Elizabeth has another question. Will you be on tour with your project? Would be amazing to experience it.
We don't have any bookings yet, but if you're interested.
Actually, at the final presentation of the semester, there was a gentleman there who is a producer of really fine vinegars in Vienna, and he has a stand at the Naschmarkt, and he asked us whether it was specifically your project and two other projects from that semester, Carmen's and also the Shadow Play, whether it could be shown on this very central market in Vienna on the Naschmarkt, and we said that we would love to do that, but then this whole Corona thing happened, and that became difficult. But it would be great if you guys are still up for it, that we get in contact again, and because it has such a show element, you could really have a worm tasting on Naschmarkt. I think that would be really cool.
Yeah, that'd be really interesting actually, and it's mostly about just showing everybody else that it's a possibility of food. You know, it's actually that's part of the interesting part of it as well.
And I think that's also where the core idea of the project lies. That would be the scenario: people seeing it, being like, "What is that?" Trying it, and then being like, "Oh, it's not that bad."
Yeah, it has to taste good, not.
Yeah. No, I mean the disgust thing. Of course, it tastes delicious.
It does taste good.
Yeah, it's actually meals turned out quite enjoyable.
Yeah,
I'd say.
Definitely.
Okay, I think Peter, do you have another question? Do you have something to add?
I have just one thing in mind. The fees at Naschmarkt are not that high, so it's quite plausible.
What do you
Just
mean?
have to resolve the legal restrictions if you serve food.
You can give
That's
a new meaning to the notion flea market.
Without being no, and this guy who has a stand invited us, so it would be in our case it would be for free because he's interested in alternative ways of producing food, local production, and all of that. So yeah, let's see. We'll give him a call and try to make it happen.
That would be really cool.
That'd be really great.
Okay, cool. Thank you, everyone, and
Thank you.
anyone who was watching.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Thanks, everybody on YouTube.
Christiane was watching. I would say hi to Christiane. Thank you again.
Yeah, exactly. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.